I've just seen Gladiator 2, but before I talk about that, let's have a history lesson. 24 years ago, back in my hometown, me and some friends from college went to our local showcase cinema. It had a special offer every Monday, movies for £2.50. So we saved up £10 each, bunked off college and watched films all day. One of those movies was Gladiator, and the thing I remember most about it was the spectacle. Seeing the scale of the Colosseum, the noise of the crowd, the shock and violence of the games. And here we are today in 2024. Is it possible to make a sequel to a story that was told 24 years ago? Is the rawness of emotion and the power of Russell Crowe's performance continued? Strap yourselves in. What did I think? I've just seen Gladiator 2. And I've got to say, well, what can I say? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about Gladiator 2. Let's just remind you of what I said about movies, right? Let's have me tell you what I said. Okay, here we go. Okay, cue me. I've been to see Heretic because that's what this channel's all about. Go and see something aside from the big stuff, the big releases of the week. So here we are, not a couple of weeks later, having just seen Gladiator 2. I think it's safe to say it's half a mess and half an epic. I enjoyed it. I did enjoy this movie. You can't deny that it's an enjoyable piece of work. But I do have to say, thinking back to the original, thinking back all those years, and, having watched it again recently, the original Gladiator was kind of unique because I certainly don't remember seeing, a Roman historical epic movie on the scale of Gladiator ever. I don't think I'd ever seen one of those before, certainly not in my lifetime. And now here we are 24 years later with a sequel to a movie that isn't the kind of film where you'd expect to see a sequel. And as I explained in the opening of this review, it's got a special place with me anyway. Whether historical accuracy or visual effects or whatever you want to say, that combination of everything brought together to make Gladiator is just, I don't know, it's a classic. For me, it's a classic like Jaws is a classic, and it's a classic like Beetlejuice is a classic, and it's a classic like Apocalypse Now is a classic, and it's created by one of the greatest directors ever, really. I mean, Ridley Scott is a legend, of course. He has created here another amazing epic, essentially. Because that's what Gladiator 2 is. It's undeniably an epic. It's beautiful to look at. I mean, it really is. The visual effects in this are absolutely stunning. I think that if we're going to moan about anything, then I don't think the visual effects are something we can moan about. It has the same structure as the original movie. So, it kind of goes on this journey that we follow our sort of new Gladiator on. And that's fine. Again, that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. As you know, these reviews are kind of like, I just try and avoid as much as possible, except for the trailer. I try and avoid as much as possible about the films that I'm going to go and see. So I can kind of just talk about them without being tainted by anyone else's opinion. I've avoided as much as possible about this film. I kind of wanted to just experience it. And having just experienced it, when it first started, when it first began, and I suppose I had an expectation. It is the sequel to Gladiator, and it's not afraid to be that. And one of the things I was thinking throughout it was the word editing. And it's kind of what's led me to believe that maybe there's more in this. I don't know, maybe there's a director's cut or a longer cut or something like that, whatever it is. There are some jumps, essentially, that, go from one scene to another. And it just feels like there's pieces in between that are missing, that have essentially and probably literally been cut out, But when you sit and think about it afterwards, even whilst I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, oh, okay, that was a bit of an abrupt change, It kind of
didn't have a build-up to those changes. It didn't have a build-up to those beats, if you will. Despite that sounding like a criticism, and I suppose it is a criticism, but despite it sounding like something that could be negative, as a whole, what we got was pretty great. You know, I did feel that way. I can't praise it enough for how good it looks, because it does look incredible. You know, the Colosseum in the original looks beautiful. I mean, it does. Both the set itself and also the computer version of it, when we see it from outside and above and blah, blah, blah. But this version, it's kind of the same, but it's just got that edge of of just looking better, you know? 24 years ago, it was at the forefront of what it was. But now it just looks absolutely beautiful. And it doesn't stick out and say, hey, I'm a special effect, aren't I amazing? It's just kind of there. And the whole of Rome looks stunning. You know, it's been realized beautifully. The opening battle itself is just like, oh my goodness me. You know, the ships and the battlements and the whole entire thing is just absolutely jaw-dropping in terms of spectacle. You're going to get spectacle from Ridley Scott. He delivers that 100%. Absolutely 100%. The more that I talk about it, the more that it's winning me over, essentially. The flaws are getting outweighed by the epicness of it. Before we drive anywhere, let's just have a talk about the performances. Paul Mescal is, in my view, one of this generation's best actors. He can really play, I think, any role. So anything. I mean, anything at all. One of my favourite films of 2022 was a movie called Aftersun. And Paul Mescal, his performance in that is frightening. Not because it's a scary film, because it's not. It's not a scary film at all. It's not even close to being a horror film or a scary film or anything like that. But his performance is terrifying. And, you know, I recommend, whatever you're doing, then stop doing it and go and watch Aftersun. It couldn't be any more different than Gladiator 2. But it's just one of my favourite films of 2022, for sure. It's what I'd consider to be a masterpiece. And Paul Mescal is in that. And you could never imagine seeing him in that. And then, you know, fast forward 2 years, and here he is as the lead in Gladiator 2. Speaking of Romans, right? Let's just think back to fucking Megalopolis. Oh my God. Things set in Rome, for me, are tainted by Megalopolis. They really are. And to its credit, Gladiator, it was able to ride that out for me. So well done, Ridley. Congratulations. I didn't think of Megalopolis when I watched your film, despite the names being the same or very similar, despite the enunciation of the characters being the same or very similar. Didn't think of Megalopolis. And that is, well, I suppose that deserves 5 stars in itself, really, because Megalopolis was... it's bad. So, we mentioned a little bit about Paul Mescal's performance, but I have to say, the star of the show here is Denzel Washington. Absolutely the star of the show. I mean, Washington himself, Denzel Washington, is a cinema legend. But in this, I would say, is one of his greatest ever roles and his greatest ever performances. I do think so. He plays Macrinus, right? And Macrinus, he got like a sort of puppet master. The Oliver Reed character in the original, he's kind of similar, but the Oliver Reed character in the original was a nobleman. Oh, he was. He was a nobleman with a good heart, who just happened to be also probably one of the coolest characters in Gladiator. Denzel Washington's kind of playing a very similar role to that, but not a copy. Absolutely not a copy. The turn of events that happened with Macrinus, you know, very different than Oliver Reed's character in the original. Very different. And just wow. Pedro Pascal plays Marcus Acacius. He is Lucilla's husband. And, we're introduced to him at the very beginning of the film, along with Paul Mescal's character as well. If we're going to have an emotional reaction to this film in terms of what happens to characters, then he certainly did bring out a little bit of emotional peril in me, for sure. Because what a character, but also what an actor. Amazing stuff. I guess that brings us to Connie Nelson. She plays Lucilla, reprising a role essentially from the original movie. If legacy is something that we are bound by, then, not only the character, but the actor herself is bound by that. And I'm glad she was in this because of all the things that happened at the end of Gladiator, and obviously me not being a historian or into history really that much, I don't know what, in the historical context, I don't know what happened to her anyway. As you can imagine from a tale told of ancient Rome, a tale told of ancient Rome properly, of course, you know what I'm referring to. There's a lot of dodgy deals going on here and there, and that's an element of this that I loved. I mean, I love that. It all holds itself together really well in that sense. And the whole political thing, it's there. It's not as pronounced as it could have been, I guess. The politics of it all. It's all there mixed in amongst the action. I think we're going to need to move now. We're going to have to go because, Anyway, let's get ready to go back, and we can talk some more about Gladiator 2. We can do that. So let's engage. So here we go anyway. Right, we're done here. That's great. All right, that's fine. So I think I know my way back, but I don't know. Whatever. We'll get to wherever we need to go eventually, I'm sure. I think, as I said before, I think you need to watch the original one before you go and see this. I recommend doing that. I think that's an important piece of this puzzle. The original is not only amazing, but, it's a decent refresher, essentially. So, I don't want to give any spoilers away for this, and I don't think I have. I think I've done really well. I think I'm proud of myself for not giving any spoilers away. The original was a great film, and I think its sequel is also a great film. Not quite as great, but it's still a great film. So, if you want to go and see this, I do recommend it. Gladiator 2 is showing everywhere in all good cinemas. So go see it. Go enjoy it. Go make your own minds up. And let me know in the comments what you think. Like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.